Hi, I'm Parker with iChongqing at the Chongqing Global Travel Agents Conference of 2018. I'm here with Stephen Richer, who is the former director of tourism in Nevada and New Jersey. And I'm happy to have him here and answer some questions about the travel industry here in Chongqing. So what do you think about the travel industry here in Chongqing, and what do you think needs to be done to market Chongqing to the outside world?
Well, first of all, holding a conference like this one is a really great way to get people from around the world to come here. And as we noted previously, it's anticipated that China will be the #1 visited country by 2030. So the challenge is to get people to come to the destinations beyond the more famous ones. And I'm talking obviously about Beijing, Xi'an, Shanghai, Guangzhou, Chengdu. But the thing that really is fascinating to me, and I've learned a lot on this visit, is the role that Chongqing has played over the last 2,000 years. I happen to be a big fan of the Qin dynasty, because here's one guy that came up with the terracotta army, the Great Wall, and a modern form of government 2,000 years ago. But Chongqing played a big role in what happened going back all that time. It's played a big role over 3,000 years, and you combine the history of China, the beautiful landscape, spaces like the municipal park, where you've got the Three Gorges Museum and the Hall of the People, and people who are in the park exercising in the morning and playing music and singing in the afternoon. So it's a great city to come to. And then on top of that, it's the base for the Yangtze River cruises. And that's a whole nother part of history and beauty that combines a lot of traditional Chinese culture. It combines some of the most beautiful vistas in the world, and one of the most important power generation projects ever built, and particularly recently in the world. So to have all that here in Chongqing is simply a really great motivator to get people to come. I know I'm having a great time.
So the history and the geography and the scenery in Chongqing is something that attracts you to Chongqing?
Yeah, not only the history and the geography, but what's going on in modern China. So what's happening with the city? How about all the bridges? How about the roads? How about the development of hotels and office space and living space, and how things are done in conjunction with not violating the urban landscape and the mountains that are here. And then I think the power grid, going up to the Three Gorges and how that works, that's all something that people around the world would like to see in their own countries.
Okay, so Chongqing is, you could say, like an entry point for discovering the state of modern China and ancient China beyond what's normally visited in China. Interesting. So what do you think needs to be improved from a travel business professional? What do you think needs to be improved here in Chongqing in terms of the travel industry?
Well, usually there's three things that people look at. One is the product, one is the marketing, and one is the delivery of the product. As far as I'm concerned, the product is here. So now you've got two remaining questions. One is the marketing of the product and which markets you want to get into, and how you let people know in those markets that they want to come to Chongqing. And the other one is the delivery of the product. And that's usually the most challenging, because when you want to deliver the product, it has to be delivered in a way that's comfortable for the visitors from different places. So let me flip that around and tell you what we do in the United States. We have something called China Ready Seminars. It deals with language, it deals with food, it deals with staff that can communicate to the visitors, signage, things that people need to feel comfortable. And there's a lot of places that are not ready in China for international visitors, whether they be Americans or Europeans or whatever, in terms of some of those basic things. So I would recommend that people here in Chongqing have some international visitor-ready seminars. What do we need to do about the language? What do we need to do to help people with currency exchanges? It's really nice if people have Baidu Translate, but it's better if somebody on the staff can talk to me in English where I don't have to struggle that way. And those are easy things to fix, but that's what I would recommend, give people some help on that.
The skyline in Chongqing attracts lots of Chinese visitors. What do you think about the skyline in Chongqing, or the look of the city? And how can that be marketed?
Well, I think it's a really big selling point. And as I mentioned earlier, there's a question of, which big city do people want to go to understand what's happening in China? And furthermore, along the lines of the discussion we had this morning, the president of Princeton University, which I attended, helped to establish a new Center for Contemporary China at Princeton, because what's happening here is so important. And Chongqing gives people an opportunity, very simply and very clearly, to grasp what is happening in this economy, what's happening in terms of the dynamics of international relationships, bringing people in, what the investments are, things as simple as airports, railroad stations, highways, number of cars, how it's managed. One thing that really gets me excited is trees and shrubbery in urban environments to lower pollution, and try and deal with that issue. So a lot of what is happening in China is exemplified here in Chongqing in a way that people can begin to grasp the progress that's being made in this country. And I think that's a selling point, because it's not true on every continent that these things are happening. So we can debate the political system at another time, but the fact is things are getting done, and that's very powerful, and people need to be exposed to it. And as a first-time visitor to Chongqing, I am so happy I came, because it gives me a much better understanding of the breadth and depth of what's happening in China.
Do you think that Chongqing should be marketed as a first stop destination, or a stop off from a more major city in China?
It probably will be something that people will either do as a second visit to China, or if you market it right, in conjunction with something on a first trip that absolutely has to include Beijing, the Great Wall, Tiananmen Square, Xi'an, and maybe here. And I would suggest that Chongqing could compete with Shanghai for some of the business that people want to go to a big city. And if you look at it, and this is from somebody who's done both, you go to Shanghai, it's a beautiful big city, you can see the Shanghai Tower, and take a river cruise. But you can do that here, and you get to see the Three Gorges, and you get to see a whole bunch of things on the shore excursions that are great cultural things that are history of China. And the only historic thing I found in Shanghai that really turned me on was the original meeting place for the Communist Party that's in one of the museums in Shanghai. So I think you can become the big city that people want to see, particularly if you offer the Yangtze River Cruise, which is really phenomenal.
So you think that you could see more history, or maybe some other history that you wouldn't see in Shanghai and Chongqing?
Yeah, I think so, because Chongqing goes all the way back to the earliest dynasties. And when you watch the map where people are showing where the original walls were in Chongqing and how it expanded over a period of time, that's what happened in China originally. And the more people understand the 2,000 years plus of history here, I mean, it always gets to me that Confucius was teaching things 2,000 years ago that make sense today, whereas in the Western Hemisphere, it's really questionable whether people were doing more than throwing rocks at each other. So I think it's just very persuasive, but people have to teach the worldwide consumers what's the map, what things are available in which places, and how do you get there.
Well, it's obvious that you know actually lots about Chinese history. That's really cool. All right, I think that's pretty much it for today. So thank you so much, Stephen, and I'll hope to see you later on in the conference. Yeah, thank you.